I was forced to witness the love between my sister and my former fiancé, and that's not enough. I have to clean up the mess they created. Chapter 24. Walking side by side, waning. Crescent. She tried to reach out to her wolves, but she did not hear a single reply from either of them. She had been trying to contact them since she had remained on her own. She stopped when she fell asleep, and now in the morning she tried again, but still with no luck. They must have been in a lot of pressure to heal her body, and that was why she could not reach them. She thought she would try again later to contact them, but now she had to change her clothes and go to the dining room for breakfast. Earlier the maid had said the king asked her if she would like to have breakfast in her room or in the dining room. Of course the dining room would be better. She would feel more comfortable there. She also hoped there would be other people there dining as well. She glanced at the clothes the maid had brought when she came to inform her regarding breakfast. She had wanted to ask Jake to bring her some from her room at the academy, but the maid insisted she choose from the ones she brought. Without another option, she changed into a maxi-knitted long dress which had a V-neckline and was of nude color. It was the most comfortable of the clothes, and it would look not too formal, but not too casual as well. She was not at the academy where she would usually wear her uniform, and this dress was perfect, as it was not tight around her abdomen where 3 of the gunshot wounds were. What was weird was that they did not bring shoes to her, but a pair of fluffy indoor slippers. She did not say anything about them, but the maid explained that it was necessary for her to be comfortable. It would not be a problem if she wore them. Once she was ready, the maid knocked on the door and asked for permission to enter. "Are you sure you are all right enough to go and eat in the dining room, Miss Blair? His Highness said to ask you again. Please do not force yourself. We can bring the food to your room," the petite, beautiful maid asked with a small smile. She was enchanted by the beautiful tall woman in front of her. The clothes that His Highness had picked himself personally from a catalogue fitted her well. Perhaps they could finally have a Luna. She sincerely hoped. His Highness had never had a female stay inside the palace before, much less take care of one personally like he had been doing with Miss Blair. Every day she had been unconscious. He would visit and inquire about her well-being. They even caught him touching her forehead or her cheek, and looking at her once or twice when they entered her room. He also repeatedly instructed them to take proper care of her, and keep the room warm enough, and even made the doctor come and check up on her several times during each day. It was no wonder he had been beside her when she finally woke up. For the 3 days she had been moved from the hospital to the palace, every moment that he did not spend walking was spent near her. He had even brought some documents that he needed to read in her room and worked from there when he could. She and the other maids already knew of the existence of the female alpha since Celia took the admittance test, and had admired her strength. With the opportunity to care for her and see her up close, they now admired also her beauty and called her secretly the Sleeping Beauty and wondered what she would be like awake. They were also curious, if only for the fact that His Highness showed so much care towards her. When they came and delivered dinner, after they were notified she had woken up, Celia had completely charmed them. She did not smile much, but she was also not arrogant, and she spoke softly to them despite the power she possessed. Her mild personality, even though she had a poker face and the aura of an alpha, was soothing. She had even tried to clean the table herself, but of course they would not let her. She was a guest and also a patient, they informed her and said was their duty. Unbeknownst to Celia, she had a growing fan club, and the maids from the palace were avid members. After assuring the maid that she indeed was well enough to eat in the dining room, she was led through the hallways until she reached a double door. The dining room was closer to the guest room than she had previously thought, as they only made a couple of turns before reaching it. She studied about the castle at school in the past, as it had a 5-year-old history, and knew it was immense, so she expected the walk would take a longer period of time. "We are here, Missy," the maid informed her, smiling. Celia had tried to make the maid call her by her first name, but she only succeeded in making her say her first name preceded by Miss. "His Highness expressly chose your room to be closer to his personal quarters and us closer to the dining room, so you will not have to walk a lot," she continued, saying cheerful. Celia nodded to show she was listening. Her face was as expressionless as always, but her heart unwillingly skipped a beat. She shyly walked in the room and took a seat on the chair the maid had indicated. It looked like she was the first one there, and, glancing at the table, unfortunately the tableware sets were arranged, she could not even sigh. As the maid stood a little further in the rear waiting, she did not start eating. It would not have been polite to do so without the host, and just placed her hands on her lap and patiently waited. Soon the double door opened and in came Solas. He was not dressed in a black suit like all the time she saw him before, including yesterday, but in comfortable home clothes which consisted of a nude V-neck sweater, black pants and black casual shoes. Just as he entered the dining room, she immediately noticed him as her seat was facing the entrance, so she quickly rose on her feet to bow. But before she could bend her abdomen, he was already by her side, stopping her. "Please, there is no need for formalities. Your body is still not well. Take a seat," Solas quickly said with the same indulgent tone as before, and also took his seat at the table. "You can leave us. We will call if we need you," he ordered the maid that stood behind Celia, and also looked towards his assistant, the same one who had showed him the video of the melee fight. The maid nodded in understanding and immediately exited, but she still stole a glance towards the table in passing. The two people looked more like a couple having matching home clothes. She was eager to inform the other girls and to cook off towards the kitchen. His assistant, exchanging a glance with Solas, knew that His Highness was referring to him as well, so he quickly followed the maid out the door, leaving the both of them completely alone. "How are you feeling, Celia? Did you manage to get some sleep last night?" Solas asked calmly, as he took a sip of his coffee. "I am feeling much better." The room was cozy and warm. "Thank you for your care, Your Highness," she replied with a poker face, but still with a tinge of redness on her cheeks, almost unappeasable. She was so nervous that she did not notice he had dropped all formalities and called her by her given name. "I am glad. Please let I or the maids know if you have any discomforts," he expressed normally at a polite tone, but inside his mind he was glad that she was feeling comfortable inside the palace. In this way he could make her stay longer. And even more importantly, he was pleased she had not shown any irritation because he had called her with her first name. "Everything has been perfect. I could not ask for more. Thank you." Everyone had treated her with care. How could there be discomforts, she thought. She lightly sipped her coffee, trying to keep her eyes from wandering around. She was not a big eater, and for breakfast she would eat even less. At home she was always the one cooking, so, because of the smell emitted while preparing the food, she was accustomed to feeling full without finishing her meal, trying to seem she was busy with something in an attempt to disperse the awkwardness. She sipped from the coffee again, but when she tried to sip once more she could not lift her hand and cup from the table. Confused, she looked to see what was obstructing her arm. On top of her slender small hand there was another bigger one. It had enveloped the whole back of her hand. "That is enough with the coffee. Please eat a croissant or some fruits. You have to replenish your energy," he advised her, then removed his hand from her own and with it added a plate with pastries and some strawberries in front of her. She nodded obstinately and ate the croissant bit by bit in silence. The electrifying touch of his hand had numbed her. Seeing her with her eyes out of focus, he wanted to speak, but as he opened his mouth the sound of his phone untimely interrupted. "Speak," Solas said, answering the phone a bit displeased. "Your Highness, the items you have requested to be brought from Miss Blair's room at the Academy have arrived," his beta mic had quickly informed. He noticed the annoyed tone on the other end of the phone call, so even more would not drag the conversation. He only said briefly the call's purpose. "All right, bring them to her room," Solas ordered concisely, then closed the phone call. "I have been informed that your books, laptop and phone have arrived. You can find them in your room," Solas informed Celia, his tone miles apart from just now. It was like he was a totally different person. "Thank you, Your Highness." Celia quickly expressed her gratitude, snapping out of her thoughts. They had asked her yesterday if there was something in particular she wanted from her room, just so she could have something to pass the time, but all her focus had been on studying, so she requested her books, but she did not think they would bring them so fast to her. She felt bad of having inconvenienced them. They were already housing her, and now she even rose up with demands. But she was afraid of her studies faltering. After all, the material to be learnt was quite extensive. Now then, let's go, Solo said, looking brightly at her, just as they finished their breakfast. Yes, she replied, but did not ask where to. They talked yesterday about informing Gabriel and Solas of the attack. Although the other students had already said most of what happened, her testimony was important for the investigation. Of course she was aware of this, and they had even mentioned it to her yesterday. Naturally, the place he was taking her to was the room her teacher would be waiting. Knowing this, she followed behind him with her head lowered, looking at the floor. She could not walk side by side with the king. It would be disrespectful. A few steps walking down the long hallway, he started to slow down, so she also slowed down her steps. But she felt it was strange as he walked even slower after a few steps, but did not stop. He was still walking further down the hallway. She once again slowed down her pace, following his own. She intended to walk behind, so of course each time he walked slower, her steps would be even slower. But as she was still following behind, looking at the floor, he stopped walking unexpectedly, making her bump into his back. She yelped as she hit her nose in his back and immediately moved back a step, embarrassed. In her tuftlessness, she must have increased her pace. She flustered, realized. "Forgive me, Your Highness." She quickly apologized, but he only sighed before speaking. "Walk beside me. Why do you keep moving behind?" "I am sorry. I did not mean any disrespect." She quickly apologized again. Before moving to his side, he sighed but was not in any way angered. He really liked that they were walking together, even like how they currently were. Whether she was behind or parallel with him, it did not matter on this regard. But behind him, he could not see her face. He could not see her, so he looked towards her direction, and gently explained, "How can we talk if you are behind me? I only meant you should be by my side. There is no need for apology, Sia." She did not speak anymore, because she would have only said sorry again. So instead she slowly moved near him to his left side. Satisfied, he did not say anything more and just walked again. They walked this time side by side through the hallway until they reached a door, and Sully stopped to open it, then beckoned her with his hand to enter before him. She thanked him and stepped inside. But as she was expecting to see his office and Gabriel waiting, the image in front of her eyes stunned her. She had never seen something quite like this in all her life. She was so bewildered that she did not even move forward to allow Salas to enter also. Chapter 25. A light blue rose. It was the middle of winter. The snow was already falling hard from the beginning of December. Even when the attack happened, it snowed a lot. The trees had lost their leaves and were covered in snow. There was no grass or any kind of plants and flower anywhere outside. Everywhere you looked there was only white snow and frost, but contrasting to the white frozen nature of the outside world. In the royal palace, inside of a huge room with a glass ceiling and windows all around, Celia was sitting on the floor looking all around her at the beautiful multicolored flowers. She thought Solas would bring her to his office to discuss the information she held about the attack. But instead he had brought her to a beautiful indoor garden. "Do you like it?" he asked as he approached her. But there was no words with which she could describe the beauty of the place. It seemed it had been made by fairies. She could not believe she was sitting on the floor, which in fact was not a floor at all, covered in all kind of different types of flowers, each one more beautiful than the other, and fragrant green grass which invited the feel of summer. It really couldn't be considered an indoor ground. A bed of flowers and grass best described it. There were butterflies all around on the flowers, in the small trees and in the air. Even bird songs could be heard. She looked his way when she heard Solas's voice. He had disappeared for a bit when they entered, but she had been too charmed by the colors and the enchanting atmosphere, and just by seeing so many flowers in one place in the middle of winter, so she had not noticed he was not with her until now. "It is beautiful, breathtakingly so," she said with a calm and serene face. But one could see a small smile adorning the corner of her mouth and her eyes sparkling. He smiled and crouched to her level. He did not say more and only slowly approached her hand and gently took it in his own. Seeing his actions, she did not visibly react in any way. as she was confused of what he wanted to do. Moreover, she could not retract her hand even if she felt uncomfortable, even if his touch sent tingles through her skin. The werewolf kingdom was not a society in which the ruler was elected. The words of the king was the final law. Solas had never been a tyrant about it. He had never issued unfair or restricting laws. Quite contrary, everything he did was in the interest of his people. So all the more reason he should be respected. Though she would never have expected the aloof and unapproachable king everyone made out him to be was like this. It seemed he quite liked to touch people. He had touched her a few times now already. She nervously and a bit unwilling let him hold her hand. But fortunately he only took it and turned her palm upend with the other hand, which he had kept behind his back until this point, covered her whole palm. Then he immediately retracted both of his arms, as Celia felt something small and soft inside her hand. Bringing her arm back in front of her, she found he had placed a small dwarf baby bunny. The tiny white furry ball kept wriggling inside her palm until it found a comfortable position before closing his eyes and falling asleep. So cute, she whispered, looking at the bunny. She was afraid to scare it awake, so she had talked very gently. Yes, you are, Solar said even more quietly than she said. Almost inaudible. It was so quiet that the charmed by the bunny Celia had not noticed and so did not react to his words. I have never studied about there being a garden inside the royal palace before. There was no such information in the books at school, Celia stated, while petting the small furry ball. This was my mother's garden. She did not want people to know about it. She did not even bring guests here often because she was afraid they would ask for her flowers or damage it in some way. She stopped petting the bunny, hearing this information, and wide-eyed suddenly looked at him as he was still crouching near her. Then I should not be here. What if I harmed something by sitting here? She alarmed mentioned and frantically looked around her to check the flowers. When she had sat down she was careful enough and had not stepped on any, but now hearing his words she was even more nervous of damaging something. Do not worry, she would not have minded you entering. You trod carefully and sat down with attentiveness, even without knowing this from me, Solas assured her. But still, Celia wanted to say, it was not right for her to trespass in her garden, but he did not let her speak further. No, but no one has been here to appreciate its beauty in some decades. I have only cared for it as a remembrance of her. I do not know of flowers and do not see beauty in them. It is good that at least there is another person knowing of its existence and appreciates it. As long as you will be staying here, please come whenever you want. I am sure she would have loved for someone to actually feel what she felt looking at the flowers. He gently affirmed, with an honest tone. He truly meant what he had told her. Thank you for showing me Her Majesty's garden. It is a privilege. She thanked him for his thoughtfulness, and did not refuse his offer of coming to see the garden. But whether she would come again or not, it was another matter. He had said she could sit comfortably, but she still rose on her feet, afraid to damage a plant. She also wanted to place the baby bunny back inside his burrow. After returning the small furry ball, they walked a bit through the garden slowly, and as she looked around she would stop from time to get a closer look of the flowers. Each and every one of them were beautiful, but the most beautiful flowers were in the center of the garden. The flowers everywhere were of so many different colors. They were red, pink, white, yellow, magenta, purple, and mixtures of those colors. But what attracted her attention the most was the bush of flowers in the center of the garden. They were colorless roses. They were white, almost translucent. Only the leaves were green, but the flowers themselves could be said to be made out of glass. She had never seen something quite like this. Seeing her stop before them looking surprised at the flowers, he explained about them without her asking. These roses are called the fairies' flowers. They have no color until a person touches them, and depending on the one who touched them they would show a different color. She was listening to his explanation as she approached the flowers. The petals looked like they were made of glass, but she wanted to gently touch a petal to see if even its texture resembled that of glass. She once told me about the flowers and the meaning of the colors it would turn into. He continued explaining, nostalgic, even more so than the garden itself. This particular rose bush was the one who best reminded him of his family and childhood. She said that dark-hearted people would turn its flowers black. Pure-hearted people would turn them into white. They would also turn into violet. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. All different kind of colors, depending on the soul of said werewolf, that they would only turn blue if. Solas was saying before swallowing the rest of his words as he saw that Thea touched gently with her hand one of them. The colorless rose changed slowly as if by magic from a translucent, white and a light blue with tinges of white on the edges of the petals. White meant a pure-hearted person, which he had expected her color to be. Few would ever try to save an entire pack of werewolves by him or herself. But the rose was white only at the edge of its petals. The rest of the petals until they reached the stem was a light blue hue. It turned blue. It indeed changes color, she said gently, happy to see the magic of the flower. What does the blue color mean? Celia asked, intrigue, still looking at the enchanting rose. He regained his composure hearing her speak. It means a noble heart. Solos replied simply. He did not truly lie, but also did not say the whole truth. He could not even explain it to himself why the flower turned blue, much less explain it to her. The meaning made her flustered. She could only look at the roses with a tinge of red on their cheeks, trying to look composed. It felt like he had complimented her, even though he only explained the meaning. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The awkward atmosphere was fortunately dispersed because of the ringing phone. Yes, Solos answered, after he took out the phone out of his pocket. Perhaps he was also happy about the interruption. The blue rose had his mind bewildered. Your Highness, Gabriel has arrived. His assistant informed him briefly, not wanting to disturb him for too long. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Tell him to wait in the office. We will be right over, Solas ordered succinctly, before ending the call. I am sorry. It seems we can't look around more now. Gabriel is waiting for us, Solas informed apologetic Celia, as the latter was still looking mesmerized of the rose that had returned to their translucent look after she had taken her hand away from its petals. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She simply said and proceeded to leave the garden. The view was wonderful and she would have liked for nothing more than to spend her time here as long as she could. But the information about the attack was the most important after all. She could not delay their investigation. Side by side again, as she did not dare tarry and walk behind the king to his annoyance. They soon arrived at the door of the garden, when Salah spoke once more, just as she was about to exit. I know fighting for your life, killing to stay alive and to protect others at the same time, was not easy at all. I cannot begin to fathom your thoughts about it, and perhaps the memory of that night will haunt you for some more time. Whenever thoughts about it resurface, come take a walk in here, at least during your stay. My mother always said this place was capable of healing her spirit. I do not know if you feel the same way about it, but if it would help even a little, Solos gently said and continued to walk, not finishing his words, not waiting for her reply. It meant he did not let her agree or disagree, but he seemed more of a gentleman because of this. She had a feeling he tried to bring her here to take her mind off of the attack. He also did that the day before, when Gabriel wanted to talk of that night. His attentiveness warmed her heart. At the same time, at the council's general office, has Lady of Honor arrived yet? The head councilman Reynolds, who was currently overlooking some documents at his desk, asked Elias, as he sharply directed his attention to look at the young man who was standing near him. Not yet, master. Her plane is scheduled to land at 2 p.m., and she will arrive here 2 hours later, Elias replied immediately. After the scolding he had received the last time, he did not dare delay in informing the councilman about matters related to His Highness, or better said, to His Highness's possible matchmaking. Good, nodded satisfied the elder. then directed his attention again towards the documents. But Emery, are you sure about this? What if it angers His Highness? He is now dealing with the attack from a week or so ago. Nobody has dared pass the borders of the forest without permission before, much less intrude and try to kidnap our kind. He has his hands full. Not to mention he should still be upset about the meeting we held a while ago without his permission. Asked, worried, the second in command of the council, Councilman Stephen Simons, as opposed to the head councilman, who still dared to interfere directly in His Highness's matters. He and the rest of the members were still more docile in this regard. Councilman Reynolds had always been a close friend of the royal family, and His Highness would still turn a blind eye to his actions, as long as he did not exaggerate too much. But would the rest be so lucky? Although, if you were to think about it, they had already acted more than they were allowed. By far, even. Stephen, there will always be something happening. That is how 1 year have already passed. Moreover, precisely because there has been an attack, His Highness must have an heir. For one, it will solidify his position. For two, it would be an insurance for the future. And three, stop it with the Emery. My name is Victor, he explained, and the last part he even emphasized it with a harsh tone. But the second in command, wanted to try to reason, but as he was about to call the head councilman by using his hated name, he quickly stopped and immediately reversed his words, especially seeing the latter's angry eyes. But Victor, His Highness is the strongest werewolf. What is there to strengthen? I mean, who could ever compete for his position? It would mean certain death for the one trying to shake his throne. Not to mention that it would only be treason, and we the council will never allow it. Stephen affirmed, sure of his words. Not even one councilman had ever tried to betray His Highness in the slightest. Not one councilman would ever try to oppose him. Apart from the air problem, that was. The newly developed Wolfsbane bullets are twice, if not more, deadlier than they were a few decades ago. We have no certainty of the future. Of course, we will do everything there needs to be done to stop the one behind the attack. And 99 of the cases, His Majesty and us will not have a problem with dealing with this problem. I just want to make sure about the 0.1 chance that there would be one. The royal family has only produced one at each generation. The family has already shrunk until His Majesty is the last werewolf with the highest rank achievable. He is the last one of the royal family. His child is our future. We can't wait any further. The elder sighed as he spoke, and taking another breath continued with determination. Lady Yvonne is one of the most powerful female werewolves of our kind at the moment. She is the prime candidate we have selected. Whether it is status, beauty, ability, and most importantly rank, she has them all. He would surely fall in love with her, no matter how stoic and stern His Majesty is. If there is one woman capable of making him attracted to a female, I am sure she is the one. He finished the words with conviction. But what about the student watcher? She is the first female watcher ever. Surely her rank would also be high enough. Stephen asked as he pondered about high-ranked females. When he heard the head councilman talking about rank, Celia Blair's ability came to his mind, as he recalled the bewildering fight he had watched on his laptop the day the Academy had emailed it to them. The female watcher is a third-rank wolf. But so is Lady Yvonne. Not to mention that Lady Yvonne is already 45 years old and has trained for a longer period of time, so she should be even higher in rank now. And another fact to keep in mind is that His Highness has already seen the Alpha a couple of times already. If he was attracted to her, he would have done something about it by now. The elder stated objectively. He wasn't a partial man to one particular lady. As long as His Highness would notice the said female, he would be satisfied. But it was true that Lady Yvonne had more advantages at this moment. But Victor, have you not heard the rumors? The second in command inquired, surprised. The news about His Highness would always be known by Emery before anyone else. It was the first time that the elder was not already aware of it. For some reason it seemed to him that the attention of the leader of the council was misplaced. Rumors? Which one? The head councilman asked, intrigued, but still did not take his eyes off of his files. It came to my knowledge that His Highness has moved Celia from the hospital to the royal palace to recuperate. He has never done so before. Perhaps it is his way of doing something about it. as you previously said. What if the presence of Lady Yvonne causes problems? Hearing this information, the head councilman was stunned. It seemed that his intelligence line faltered so much that even his second-in-command found something as important as this before him. Quite annoyed at this fact, he directed his gaze towards his assistant with narrowed eyes and hummed before looking back to Stephen. His assistant sighed. Truly everyone was implicated in investigating the attack and other Watcher problems. He did not have time to inquire about the matters in the palace. He had thought that his attention for when Lady Yvonne would arrive and where she was at this moment was enough. He really had the worst of jobs. He finally thought. The elder was never satisfied with his work. Well, even if Lady Yvonne's presence causes problems, it is all right. It would still be a move forward from this point onward. Something to stir up the stalemate situation. His Highness knew of the female Watcher and saw her some months ago, and did not react yet. So whether he likes her or not, it is not certain. Also, even if His Majesty does not take a liking to Lady Yvonne, her presence might make the female Watcher want to be closer to His Majesty, wary of somebody stealing his heart. Truthfully speaking, I would not mind Celia Blair as his partner or Lady Yvonne either. If His Highness has a baby with someone, anyone, I would be satisfied. Emery replied with the same conviction as before. He was a stubborn man. It would take more than 1 or 2 reasons to make him change his mind. Once he set his thought on accomplishing something, his assistant and Stephen both sighed, looking at one another, understanding the other's thoughts just by looking at each other's faces. They only hoped that the interference of the old man did not make matters worse. If there was truly something going on between Celia and His Highness. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Salas's POV. It was already more than 2 months and 2 weeks ago. The last time he saw her, he met her at opening ceremony and, for the first time in his life, fell in love. He felt like it was a joke. He was already 100 years old werewolf, and he fell in love with a 22-year-old pup and was now missing her like crazy. Whenever he would close his eyes, her smile and her blushing face would appear in his mind. Would everyone laugh at him if they knew? Let's go see her. Come on, it has been a long time already. Make an excuse or something. It is our academy. There must be something for us to do there. Sky, his wolf, urged him for the 100th time. But he already knew there was no viable reason. Unfortunately, in this case, the management of the academy had been handled by him too well, and things went so smoothly by themselves that, other than the annual inspection, there was no need for his presence. We cannot go to the academy. I already told you we have no reason to go there, he explained to his wolf. For the nth time, even if we do not have a reason, we can still go. Don't tell me I am the only ones to see her. Sky insisted again, with a persistence that was truly uncharacteristic for the alpha wolf. No matter what you say, we cannot go. Solos denied firmly, trying to end the conversation once and for all. If he could call it a conversation, it felt more like the wolf was threatening him. And as to how he could do it, considering they both shared the same body, and thus could also harm himself in the process, where even though someone might think it could be practically impossible, it was in fact quite easy. If we do not go, I will howl until you go. I will not let you work. Every time you close your eyes you think of her as well. So why don't you want to go? Sky asked again, this time growling. Sky, I admit I like Celia. All right, I love her. How it is possible to love someone after only meeting her twice, I have no clue. But I do not understand you. I have asked you if you felt like she was our mate, and you said you do not recognize her. I like her human side. But what about her wolf? He sighed and rubbed his temple as he spoke inside his mind. I have no clue about her wolf. Indeed, I do not feel she is my mate, but still her human side. I do not know how to explain it. It is like she is half a mate or something like that. Sky mumbled, confused. He tried to phrase as best he could his feelings, but he himself did not understand why he felt attracted to her human side, but not to her wolf. Solas did not question Sky's affirmation at all. The wolf's words, although strange and unusual if someone else other than him would hear it, to Solas they made sense in a way. That was how he felt about her as well. Like half a mate. But would such a thing be possible? He shrugged his thoughts. He had thought about his feelings many times in the past 2 months and a half without any conclusion. He also did not know who to ask without sounding weird or raising suspicions from the council. Knock knock. Come in, he ordered shortly, looking again at the documents he was trying to read before with no luck. Your Majesty, I have been informed that the students entered the forest for their exercise. The assistant who had just entered the office informed Solas. Very well, keep an eye on them. Make sure everyone is well protected. Solas ordered, not even looking to the young man who confounded and left again shortly after. This entire time he continued looking at his documents. Or at least tried to. Sky had really begun howling inside his mind. Like he had said he would. The wolf was a really determined being. He sighed inaudibly. Sky was really being unreasonable this time. He had already heard from the assistant that Celia had gone into the forest for the exercise, so naturally wouldn't be at the academy. But it seemed the wolf thought it was even better like this. He was now trying to convince Solas to go to the forest and meet Celia there. Like he could just do that suddenly. To just go and be like, hello everyone. I just left my entire work and ran inside the forest just to meet one of the students. The scandal of the century, Solas thought dejectedly as he plopped his head on his desk. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Sky was still howling unbothered inside his mind. Unlucky for Solas, the wolf, while not shifted and thus still in a spirit form, would not get tired. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. At the time he did not know that even with his protection the attack would still happen. A week later, finding her like that and then the agony of waiting to see if she lived or not was unbearable. So he did something he had never done before. He transferred her to the royal palace where she would be near him. His order of moving her had surprised the doctors and the people from the palace, but nobody dared question him, waiting for a week for her to regain consciousness. He kept her company as much as he could, only by being near her to see if she was well. Could he breathe easily? Then seeing her wake up, he did for her something unthinkable. He personally cared for her needs, even knowing it would raise more suspicions, causing people from the council to find out. Gabriel, the blabbermouth, was in the room with him after all at that time, so he could tattle on him, but he could not stop himself not to help. They let her rest for a bit that day, but Solas was still worried about her, so he returned to her room just in time to see her walking and almost falling. With swift steps he reached her and quickly held her in his arms to stop her from falling. With his werewolf senses and speed, he could have easily reached her in time to assist her by only reaching for her arm. It was not really necessary to keep her so close to his body. It would have also been the gentleman thing to do, but at that time his body reflexively moved on its own. Not to mention that Sky also wished for nothing more than to hug her, so he held her against his chest tightly. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. If he was to admit, this had also been his wish, his yearning. Feeling her body in his arms, he felt completed, although his face did not show it. When she raised her eyes to look at him, the only thought in his mind had been how kissing her pink small lips would feel like. He barely restrained himself, as he really did not want to scare her. How would she react if he gave in to that feeling? Perhaps she would never want to see him again. So he only helped her to the bathroom and then informed the maids to bring dinner to her room. He at least wanted to be near her. The next day, at breakfast, dark circles surrounded her eyes. An experience like the one she went through was not an easy thing at all, especially for a young girl like her. To kill someone for the first time and to also fight for your own life must have taken its toll on her. Coupled with the wounds, her entire being felt frail. He was supposed to interview her after breakfast, to find out more from her about the attack, but seeing her like that he could not bear to. So he did the one thing he knew cheered up his mother whenever she felt upset. He took her to his mother's garden. There he also searched for a baby bunny from the small burrow inside the ground. bringing it to her, seeing her slight smile and the light in her eyes. He knew then that he made the right choice. They walked around some more, as he saw her spirit would get brighter by the second. Knowing he was the one who made this happen, he could not be more pleased. He was also thrilled seeing her in the place that was the most nostalgic from his childhood, one of the few places that held happy memories of him with his mother. But something unexpected happened when they arrived in front of his mother's most beloved flowers, the fairies' flowers. It was not his intention to check which color her touch would show, but perhaps liking them, Celia herself leaned towards them to touch one of the roses. He was just in the middle of explaining to her their meaning, when the color of her heart reflected on their previously translucent petals. The blue was a color only meant for the royal family. No other werewolves could turn the petals of the roses to this color. Dark blue color would only appear if he or his father touched the flowers, and light blue only appeared if his mother, the mate of the king, touched them. Because of this, his mother had often teased him as a child. She would always say she could not wait for the day the woman who would turn the rose petals light blue to him as well. As a quiet child, he did not react to her words and always evaded her when she teased him of this. But in his heart he had always expected and yearned for the person who could turn the roses into the same color as his mother. Seeing the beautiful girl bent over the flowers, smelling the blue rose with a tinge of red on her cheeks, his heart rate went up. It almost felt like it would jump out of his chest. He looked for so many years for his mate. He had checked all the packs one by one when he came of age. He was certain he would find her. But over the years he had lost all hope. When he saw Sia at the airport that day, he felt for her what he never felt for another woman. And when he saw her again at the academy, he fell completely under her spell. So as he saw her laying in her own blood, he felt his heart die with her, and only managed to revive when she woke up again. Sky, his wolf, was also mesmerized by this person, but strangely only by the human side of her. He did not recognize her wolf, so she did not feel like she was his mate in spite of such things. His mother had told him that they would recognize each other at first glance, that there would be only one word which would come to both their minds, and there was, in that moment, mate. But sadly this word did not come to his mind, and he was certain it did not come to hers. So the light blue color of the roses was an impossible color for her to appear. Was it because she was truly his mate, as his mother had said, and she concealed her real strength so well that he could not recognize her? Or was the rose blue because she was ranked first, the same as him, so the flowers recognized her as royalty? His train of thoughts was interrupted when she spoke to him, asking what the color meant. He wanted to say the real meaning, but he was afraid that it would shatter his hopes if she was indeed not his mate. So he only said it meant a noble heart. His mother had been the kindest person he had ever seen in his life, and Celia, judging by her previous actions, was not far from her. The small tinge of flush on her cheeks as she registered the meaning behind the color was truly endearing, he thought, though he could not fully enjoy her expression because of his own inner turmoil. The awkwardness was dispersed completely as he received a phone call to inform him of Gabriel's arrival. To be interrupted when he was with Celia, he really would get annoyed if it had happened normally, but this time perhaps it was for the best. He barely opened the door to his office and gestured to her to enter first when Celia was wrapped around by big male hands. Seeing her in another man's arms, he did not yank her out of the other person's hands for fear of hurting her, but he let out a low growl, making the other person release her, but unfortunately still be near her. Gabriel, I did not mention for you to come alone, but surely not bringing someone was something I did not need to mention, Solo said, anger spilling from his voice even though he did not raise it. I am sorry, Your Highness. I insisted and came on my own accord. I am the beta of the Watcher pack, Jake Black. I could not stay relaxed in the academy ground knowing my alpha is injured, so I dared, Jake tried to say. He was already lowering his head, showing his neck in submission. From the moment the door opened he felt an oppressing aura, and it kept on increasing. I was not talking to you, Beta, Solo simply said. He felt pangs of jealousy all over his heart, and Sky was also growling in his mind. He only dared to touch her hand and she slightly flinched. But this guy hugged her? He was only the beta of the pack. Why was there a need for such familiarity? Your Highness, I am sorry. I have not instructed my pack members well. I must not have assured Jake last night well of my health status. It is my fault. I apologize. It will not happen again. Celia quickly apologized. Seeing her frightened face, he immediately released his oppressing aura. It was not his intention to frighten her. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Do not apologize. It is not your fault, he said with a gentler voice. Joshua led the beta to the waiting room. You will wait there if he wants a word with his alpha, and afterwards help him on the way back. He ordered, looking at Celia, but the words he said were for his gamma, who had been in his office as well. By doing this, he made sure that they would talk a little and only in the presence of his gamma. Joshua complied and immediately took the reluctant Jake to an adjacent room, leaving the others to discuss in the office. When the meeting was over and Celia had provided valuable information to them, she took her leave and went out with Micah, Solaz's beta, to direct her towards the room Jake was waiting. Well, you do realize your face changed completely, from dark to light in a matter of seconds just now. What would the council say seeing you like this? Would they prepare the lunar ceremony or just skip right on to the wedding night? Gabriel teasingly said. As he was the only one left in Solaz's office, he did not retort his words, but Solaz's eyes felt like they could kill with just a look. Hey, go back to the previous light look. What if Celia comes back? You would not want to frighten the girl, right? Gabriel continued joking, not knowing he was stepping on a lion's tail. It seems like you have less work than you should have. Let's see what we could add to your schedule, Solaz said with a deep voice. Wait. Maria is going to kill me if you add more to my work. I am sorry, Your Highness. Gabriel quickly apologized, appearing truly repenting. The time he had to spend with his mate was already less as it was. Solaz just stabbed at his weak point. But jokes aside, is Celia your mate? You have never shown such care to a woman before. Gabriel asked, sighing. Solaz was quiet. He did not know what to reply to Gabriel, but feeling the need for an advice, he finally spoke after some time. I do not know. Skye does not recognize her wolf, but we are both fond of her human side. Is she a mate? Solaz asked himself. While he was massaging his temples, he was truly going mad for asking advice from Gabriel, but he did not know who else to turn to. How is this possible? Both wolves would recognize each other at first glance. Gabriel frowned, confused. That was what I knew too. But Skye said he does not recognize her wolf. Still, my head is only filled with thoughts of Celia. Am I going crazy? Solaz finally admitted dejectedly. Wait a minute. You said wolf, not wolves. Do you remember what I told you in the conference room at the hospital? Gabriel said, enlightened, and as if realizing something gestured with his hand as he raised fingers, showing the number 2. She has 2 wolves, not 1. Which one did Skye not recognize? Gabriel asked as if to confirm his suspicions. It was a grey wolf with tints of black. Solaz conveyed Skye's description. That is her friend wolf. Did he not contact a white bigger wolf also? Gabriel questioned again, his words filled with more hope each time. No, he said he only felt a grey wolf's presence. Solaz replied pensively, as Skye assured him there really was no other presence inside her wolf's chamber. The white wolf is first strength, but she keeps herself hid and deep within Celia's mind. We must make Celia bring out waning, then you can check again. Gabriel reasoned. We cannot do that. Solaz firmly denied. He did not even wait for a second to think before he replied. Why not? Don't you want to find your mate? Gabriel frowned, not understanding Solaz's thoughts. The man had always wanted to find his mate. Why was he so stubborn now? I do, but I do not want to force Celia. Skye may not have sensed waning because she keeps herself too deep in Celia's mind. But Skye is in plain view in my own. Waning must have felt him, if she truly was his mate. Why still keep herself hidden? Sodders explained briefly. We can ask her when she is in the open. Will you keep on waiting? Gabriel tried to convince him again. He was surprised by how calm Sollers was. His friend had searched high and low for his mate. Now with the opportunity in front of him, he did not try to do anything. Was he afraid of getting his hopes up for nothing, and was that why he did not dare act? He sighed when Sollers did not answer, but still left something for Sollers to ponder over. Whether she is or not your mate, you should find out. Wasn't this what you have been waiting for all this time? Even keeping the council at bay with regards to another woman. Sollers, if you wait longer someone else might act faster than you. Gabriel stated with one last reason and without referring to who. Sollers already knew that he was referring to the overly worried Beta from before. Chapter 26. A convenient person, she tried to cut the conversation with Jake as short as she could. Earlier His Highness had been angry at him coming to the palace. Normally the palace was only open for official visits, so he must have been upset about students coming and going as they pleased. Perhaps he thought that as Jake visited her, others would follow as well, which breached the security and the protocols. She made Jake promise not to come anymore. Moreover, she would only be staying about a week or so, and she also received her phone and could contact him freely in the future, so there was no need to. Leading him to the door of the palace, she said her goodbyes, and wanted to turn around to go to her room. Despite being a patient, she walked quite a bit and was actually feeling tired, but she only made one step when Jake unexpectedly stopped her. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I am truly glad you are right. I don't know what I would have done if something happened to you. He said and did once again what he had wanted to do when he saw her entering the king's office. He hugged her with all his strength, even forgetting her wounds in the process. She was stunned by his familiarity towards her, but considering how close they had gotten these past few months, she did not stop him. She only gently patted his back with her hands. It is the last time you will ever go somewhere alone. The next time the entire pack will be with you. We will never permit for such a thing to happen again. He affirmed more like a whisper in her ear. She nodded and smiled a bit. She really felt her pack's care towards her. It was not a feeling she was used to, but it wasn't a bad sentiment at all. Releasing her from his embrace, Jake finally walked away towards the door, this time really leaving. She turned around once more, wanting to climb the stairs leading to her room, when she came face to face with Sollers' eyes as he was at the top of the stairs. She walked slowly up the stairs as she was a bit shy seeing him, wondering if he had seen the embrace between her and Jake. There were no rules stating Watchers could not date each other or be so close to one another. But what if he had misinterpreted the situation and it actually bothered him, considering this was the royal palace? Not to mention that she somehow felt guilty of hugging Jake in front of him, but she was too intimidated by his presence to realize it. Has your beta left? He asked with a gentle voice, but still his face did not show any emotions. Yes, Your Highness. I am sorry once again. I have made sure he will not visit anymore. Anyway, I will be staying for only 1 week here, so there will be no more visitors. She replied, trying to reassure him that she or her pack would not bother him again. But as she lifted her head and looked into his eyes, she remained still in place. The usual ocean blue eyes that were capable of making her feel embarrassed with just one simple glance were now losing their blue hue, darkening a bit. It was almost as if he was trying to keep his wolf under control. Noticing her startled reaction at realizing its cause, he quickly turned away from her so she could no longer see his face and only said a few more words before briskly leaving. She understood the reaction of His Highness. She knew the reasons behind it without him having to actually say it, but it still took her aback. His gentle behavior until now, as opposed to the aura he released some hours ago, were miles apart. Coupled with the fact that he had almost lost control of his wolf just now, she felt she was understanding him less and less. With each passing moment, she had gotten used to his behavior from the previous night, and in the morning and thought perhaps it was his normal way of speaking. Though indeed he still spoke gently to her. Towards Jake he even growled, threatening. Perhaps he was gentler to girls and not to guys. These were the thoughts that were roaming through her mind as she was charging and opening her smartphone. She barely turned it on when the phone began ringing. She even saw she had a dozen or so missed phone calls in the second that the phone opened up before it rang. It was her brother Daniel, so she did not ponder much and answered. Surely he was not worried about her, as she had explained to him she would be in exercise for 2 weeks and would not take a phone with her. She was in the forest for a week and unconscious for another week, so for her brother, not contacting him for this period of downtime should not have her in any worries. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Finally you answered your phone. I have been trying to contact you all morning, Daniel quickly said. Relieved, she finally answered. Sorry, the phone had no battery. I only just noticed and plugged it in, she explained simply. If he only just tried to contact her this morning, there were no reasons for him to know about why she did not answer until now. She did not want him to worry. What is the matter? She asked him, curious and worried because of the sense of urgency she could feel in his tone. I know what happened to you was inexcusable. What Brianna and Mon did to you. The fact that they schemed in stealing your rightful mate can't be forgiven. That is why I never mentioned them when talking to you these months. I did not want to add to your pain. Daniel frantically tried to explain his reasons for bringing up these unreasonable problems, matters of which he had not once spoken to her about since it happened, but he felt he needed to, otherwise he was not sure she would help. Daniel, it is all right. Don't try to motivate what you really want to say and just tell me what the actual problem is. She interrupted him, as a sigh left her chest. She was feeling tired both mentally and physically about the attack. Flashes of memory of her dismembering and killing the hunters kept appearing in her mind whenever she was alone. All she wanted now was to sleep. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He said, then sighed, trying to rephrase how to actually tell her. But he did not speak again, as the phone was snatched from his hand, and another voice could be heard through it. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. After you left, Brianna was made the Luna of our pack. She is already pregnant and everyone knew the ceremony was for her. So Richard forced Strahan to make her his Luna. Otherwise he would not hand over his leadership. You also made your position clear that you will not accept him as a mate. The problem is that, even though he conducted the Luna ceremony for her, they are not getting along at all. The situation between them has gotten so strained that they fought countless times and he even hit her. At the moment she is in the hospital with the risk of losing her child. Her father explained coldly as he took the phone from Daniel. Between the words he had just heard fully laid out in front of her. Not even one was an apology. Not even one word expressed regret and reflection for their actions. Even less repenting for causing her harm. She did not know how to react to what she just heard. It pained her that her sister was suffering. It hurt her if an innocent child suffered because of irresponsible adults. But still, not only did they not try to contact her all this time to see how she was, considering she was the one who was most hurt of what happened and their betrayal, now they even phoned to inform her of Brianna, of a person who was suffering as a consequence of her own actions and most probably wanted her to do something about it. A week ago she almost died and nobody from her family would have cared if she did. The common knowledge was that werewolves from the same family would feel somewhat if their loved one had been hurt, especially if it got to the point of their life ending. They should have felt her being attacked. They should have felt the feeling of utter powerlessness as she felt her life drained from her body, if she was considered a loved one by them. She listened to her father as these thoughts flooded her mind without a word of interruption. She kept waiting to hear a word directed to her by him, a word from him caring about her well-being. Her eyes were getting moist as he explained. Not even a hello, he said, and as she thought this, a small single tear fell on her poker, seemingly emotional as his face. He did not even ask her how she had been and how she was surviving. Another tear fell from the other eye, reaching her cheek all the way until it reached her jaw. I know you are a smart child and you love your sister. You would do everything for her. The peace of the pack depends the most on the Alpha and Luna getting along. They are already together and expecting a child. but because you did not reject Rayan formally. The bond between you two is not completely severed, so he still cannot fully accept Brianna and Marka, as he should have done after the ceremony. Her father sighed, as he explained the premises of what he was about to ask of her. Finally touched the matter he wanted from her. I know you cannot leave the academy grounds as you please and come to our pack, but on the 20th of December the annual ball for the gathering of alphas and betas will be held at the Royal Palace. You will also be on vacation for a few days, so you can leave the academy at least for a couple of hours. Try to ask permission from the teachers to visit us at the Royal Palace. Your mother, Rayan, Brianna and I will be staying at one of the buildings adjacent to the palace, so come and finish things with Rayan once and for all. Reject him properly this time so everything will settle down. He finally said, already quite calm. This daughter of his had always listened to his words. The last time had only been a mishap, because she had felt upset. But surely in this time, she had already gotten used to the situation. Her face was already flooded with tears at this point. She could not even see properly. Her father first said Brianna was injured so much that she was on the verge of losing the child. But at the end he said she would still be at the ball, which was for days from now. If she was injured so badly, how come she would still travel? They were still trying to manipulate the feelings she had towards her sister, and on top of that they were also trying to instill in her the consciousness to do the right thing. She closed her eyes as she was trying to stop herself from losing more tears. She was so shocked at the time she went to the lunar ceremony and only wanted to get away from her pack territory that she had omitted to formally reject Rayan. All this time she did not even think that he was her mate, so she still had not realized she did not reject him formally. To our agent extraordinaire, webnovel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, she said with a cracked voice, the only word she said to her father during this entire phone call. Good, that is my daughter. Study well and make me proud. He replied, pleased with her answer. He didn't notice the strangeness of her voice, though it wasn't unusual, as he had not really paid attention to her state. In the next second, only the sound of the phone call ending could be heard. He got what he wanted from her. What was the point of still talking? She was only acknowledged as his daughter for the fact she accepted what he wanted. She let the phone fall from her hand and did not check her other missed calls or messages. She no longer even wanted to sleep. With unsteady moves and already hazy eyes, she rose on her feet and called again, inside her mind waning. Crescent. But with no answer, she called again desperately, but no one responded this time either. Could they have left her as well? With unsteady steps, she left her room and followed the hallway until she reached the indoor garden. His Royal Highness had said she could come again any time she wanted, but she had not expected she would need a place of comfort so soon. In fact, she thought to herself she would not come again to this place. It was after all a private room of His Highness's mother. How could she, a simple werewolf, just waltz inside as she pleased? She opened the door and stepped inside and, with slow steps, reached the center of the garden. Gently, with soft moves, she touched the transparent petals of the rose. So beautiful it was almost blinding. The petals soon turned blue with white edges, the same color as before. She smiled to herself with tears still flowing down. A noble heart, what a joke, she thought. More like a rag to be used for everyone's convenience. More like an object used for one's wishes and disregarded once it was no longer of use. A convenient person, feeling defeated. She slumped down on the floor, no longer crying, still admiring the roses in front of her. To my agent extraordinaire, webnovel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A familiar voice called from behind, just as she was at her lowest point, but she did not dare turn around. This person only saw her at her worst, injured, then frail, and now even crying. Embarrassed by her current messy state, she quickly used her hands to wipe the tears away as she felt him approaching her, but she could do nothing of her red eyes. She was frantically wiping when a hand reached her arm and stopped her from wiping again. Are you all right? Are you hurt anywhere? He asked, worried and flustered, not knowing what could possibly be the cause of her unrest. Had she been too frightened by his earlier darkened eyes? What should he do to make her not afraid of him anymore? What should he do if she wanted to leave the palace because of him? Unaware of the million wrong thoughts inside this person's head, Celia looked towards him ashamed. He had said the words she wanted to hear from her father. She saw in his eyes the care she wished she received from her family. At his gentle words, she said nothing at all, only kept on admiring his inquiring and worried face. Such beautiful eyes had frowned because of her. With just a look he tore apart her poker face, and without realizing she found herself putting her arms around his waist, hugging him and crying like she never cried before.